I'm Angelica Ramirez. I'm a bonsai student and the current apprentice at the U.S. National Bonsai and Penjing Museum, and you're listening to Bonsai Time Podcast.
Seattle for my undergrad degree, and that's where I met Dan Robinson. And he lived about an hour away by the ferry, and then I had to like bus to the ferry terminal. So I went like every weekend to go visit his garden, and he would pick me up from the ferry terminal and would just go work on trees. So that's kind of when I got really immersed in bonsai, and that's where I got this picture.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's really nice with the water behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And burning.
Yeah, it's a nice place. You got to make it out there sometime.
Oh yeah, definitely. I haven't been to that area. I did visit Seattle at one point, but that was well before I got into bonsai, which was a real shame because that would have been so nice to visit all the bonsai places out there.
But now you know what to look for, I guess. So
yes, now I know. It's like I visited Australia and I visited the National Collection in Canberra. And that was before I got into bonsai, and I could not appreciate it the way I do now.
Simple minds.
Yeah. I look at the pictures like, oh my god!
Did you even know how to take a proper picture of a tree then?
Yeah,
this looks cool. Like selfie mode, just like.
Yeah.
That's funny. Angela, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I want to give
Angelica, right?
Yes.
Angelica,
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Use mine.
Don't want to make the same mistake the whole meeting long or interview long, you know?
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, do you have a name that you prefer besides Angelica, or is Angelica good?
Well, Angelica has always been my name, but my friends back in Chicago call me JoJo.
Okay. Are we there yet for the friendship, or are we waiting to call JoJo?
Let's see how the interview goes first, Kevin, you know?
No, I'm playing. No, Angelica's great. I just want to give a quick shout out to Dave Cutchins for throwing me your name and saying, hey, get her on, blow her up, like make it happen. Like, cool. Dave's a good friend. Met him a while back. Good buddy. You studied with him, right? A little bit?
So he was actually, okay, so my mentors are a little scattered in there because I started right at the beginning, right before COVID. So there's a lot of self-learning in there. My first mentor was from a nursery near my house. So his name is Feng Gu. He has a little small nursery there. And that was my first like hands-on experience. I would go there and pester him until he was like, okay, I'll teach you. You know? I mean, he gave classes. He's really nice. And then I started doing a lot of self-learning like through videos and books. And I remember one of my first books I ever read was John Naka's, Bonsai Techniques, of course, and I happened upon Peter Chan's videos from Heron's Bonsai, and I got obsessed. I got super obsessed. And then I made up my mind that I was going to go visit him, and I wanted to learn from him. And that just kind of blossomed into this whole, he's another mentor. So I consider him my like long distance second mentor. And David is like the long distance close. Sorry, not long distance, close distance. Closer. He's in Florida. Same state at least. So it's like third mentor, second, third. It's kind of, they kind of mix in there, and there was isolation, with the lockdown and everything. But yeah, I know he's been. I cannot say nice enough things about David to really convey what he's like and what he's done for me. He's been instrumental in my journey in bonsai.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. Just real quick, you have a really extensive background. Like, you're a craftsperson. You're also I read your website. You said a Renaissance woman, which I would definitely fit into that.
That was from the Purple Pot Society. They did a really beautiful article, and they called me Renaissance woman. I thought that was so sweet and so nice. So thank you so much to them. And then since they said it, I was like, oh, well, that means I can say that.
Oh, for sure.
Once somebody else says it, then you got the green light, right?
Someone else says it, yeah.
It's like check mark. Pink.
Yeah.
How did you start out even doing the things you did before bonsai? Like what was your upbringing like? What did you do? Are you originally from Florida, or did you grow up somewhere else in the States, or?
I've been in Florida my whole life. I was born in Palm Beach County, and then by the time I was in third grade, I moved to Melbourne, and we've been there ever since. Um,
So where in Florida is that?
Melbourne,
Like,
okay, so
uh-huh.
if for anybody who doesn't know the areas of Florida, think about where NASA and SpaceX they do their launches. I can see them from my backyard. So,
Okay. Okay,
so
cool.
they're more north in like Titusville area. We're a
Mhm.
little bit more south, but I can still see the little rocket going up. Fun fact, when you have people that are not from the area visit the house and the rocket goes off, people are like, oh my God, it's an earthquake. Oh my God, people start freaking out. I was like, what is that? Oh my God. We're like, oh, it's just a rocket going off. Let's go look at it. And it's like, wow, because it booms and the whole house kind of, the windows shake. It's an experience.
Wow.
Mhm.
That'll be. I would
Yeah,
be.
it's central East Coast Florida.
Got
Okay.
it.
Mhm.
Does it get cold there, or is it pretty lukewarm year round?
Well, it's hot all year round. Maybe
Okay.
maybe get 1 month out of the year around January, February that kind of gets colder where you have to worry about your trees. All the
Winter.
tropicals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they might go under 50 and then
Ooh.
you're
Shucks.
freaking out. You're
Oh
freaking
darn.
out.
But we hit negatives this year, I think, in December. Yeah.
Mhm.
I was I
Yeah, no,
was in
whereas
Japan for that.
I think the lowest I got I was like the low 30s. I think on one day, maybe. I'm not exactly sure. My memory is not the greatest, but that was oh my God! I bring all the trees inside the house.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you do archery, you
Yes.
do painting or stitching, is that right? Or all of the above?
Okay, well, I'll start from the beginning then.
Okay. Yeah.
I like to talk, so I tend to get off track. I go on one tangent,
No
and then.
problem.
That's perfect. This is going to be a long episode, I can already tell.
That's good. That's good. Let's make it
Yeah.
happen.
So yeah, being in Florida my whole life, I started, my upbringing, my parents have always been very supportive and they've also pushed me pretty hard growing up to be the best I could be at whatever I decided to do. Now, I never really knew what I wanted to do in my life, like a career wise and things like that, but I always had a lot of passions and a lot of interests. And my parents were very, how do you say, um, open to all
Mm.
that, right? All those new experiences. So, my dad introduced me to music. I started playing piano when I was like 6 years old. My mom started playing cello a few years after that. And then of course me, when I was really little, things needed to be fair. I'd go to the lesson and my dad would be sitting there outside the lesson room, reading a magazine or something. I'm like, you have to take lessons too. What is this? Taking lessons. So he started the violin. So what you'll as I tell my story, you'll see that my parents have been a part of all the things I do. They also do them too. That brings us closer together as a family. So music was where we started.
So you started the family band pretty much.
Sort of, yeah, yeah.
Still working on the album.
Yeah, most of it now is me and my father. My mom doesn't play anymore, but she likes to be very supportive and listen.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I started out with cello and I quickly grew into that. That became a major part of my upbringing. I did it competitively. I played in every orchestra I could at school, outside of school. I mean, trying to be always first chair, like always trying to be super, trying to make all county, all state, trying to be as high as I could get with it. My parents behind me the whole time, like practice, practice, practice. And then I think around middle school, I'm not exactly sure. Um, there was one day I was doing really good with the cello, and my dad he was really happy. I'd just done a big solo for a concert, and usually he takes me out to dinner after. As a family, we'll go get some dinner, and like a little celebration after the concert. They did so well. I would get really nervous, all the performances and auditions, and this one, he's like, you know what? Instead, why don't we try? Is this something new? Like what? What kind of? What are you into? Like, at that time it was like a gift. Like you want to give me a gift, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my favorite gifts are experiences, right? I like to learn things. I like to do stuff. So I don't know where I got the idea, but it just popped into my head. And mind you, this is before all the movies came out, and this is like I don't know where I got this idea, but out of the blue, I just said, let's try archery. I still to this day do not know where I got the idea. So my dad looked at me and was like, what? It's so weird. And that's the trend of my life. It's like it goes this direction and then this direction and then this direction, you know?
I can relate.
So we went to like a sporting goods store and we found a bow. We had no idea what we were doing. We found a local like archery club nearby, like our little range in the park. Happened to be an archery range 5 minutes from our house. So worked out. And pretty quickly, we got into the local clubs, and this is where I started, finding communities, right? Where we realize, okay, if you want to learn something, best way to do it is to join your local club. There's a lot of, especially in Florida, there's a lot of clubs for whatever you want to learn, basically, as long as it's not like a winter sport, with ice, but
yeah, right.
Yeah. So we joined a local club and we made friends, and quickly after that, they helped us set up our gear and figure out what we're doing. We watch a lot of videos. We start watching, it's no different than cello. We would apply the same techniques for practice, looking up professionals, watching their videos, see how they shoot, analyzing their technique and things like that. And before I knew it, the hobby became a semi-profession. And I say semi-profession because I didn't make any money off of it. Like right. Archery is not a lucrative sport, but before you knew it, I was doing state championships, national championships, and then I made the USA team and started doing world events, and it just kind of kept going. And
you were still playing music at the time, right?
Yeah. So by the time I was on the USA team, I was in college and I was majoring in music performance.
Where'd you go to school?
University of Florida.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So, so that was like the peak of that. I went all the way up there, but it doesn't pay. And as much as I loved it, and the same thing with music, it didn't feel like, okay, well, archery wasn't sustaining. Although I love to do both, and I still do both. I've never quit anything I do. But it just, music wasn't something I wanted to dedicate my life completely to, and archery didn't pay. So between the two of them, I had to kind of reevaluate, and I decided to go a different path. So I came home. At that time, honestly, I was a little. It was a low point.
Yeah.
Having been so high up there, and then feeling like there's nowhere to go, and you don't really want to go in that direction, and then you go home after putting so much effort, and you feel like what have I done? What am I doing with my life? I felt like a failure, honestly.
When you were what, mid-20s at this time?
I was at UF for 2 years only, and I think I was 20.
Okay, that's reasonable for the age of like not knowing what you want to do in your life.
Yeah. So I was devastated because I'm still paying my debt for school.
I feel that.
And I still play my cello. I still love to play in orchestras. I still teach my students. I still love to do that. But although I like to do that on the side, it wasn't the thing, right? So in archery now I do it more for fun. So then I decided, after that, I needed to kind of rebuild myself. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to make a list mentally of all the things I want to learn in my life. Life is short. Mm-hmm. So let me look, what stuff do I want to learn? And just like the archery, stuff started popping up, and I wanted to learn how to drive a train. Playing a helicopter, just randomly things I thought would be really cool to learn. I just really want to learn them, And I went to my parents with it. And, I was, they're there the whole time. They know my journey, right? So, and I told them my ideas, like stuff I wanted to learn. They're like, go for it. We'll be there. We'll support you. As long as you're not just sitting doing nothing and wasting your life. As long as you're putting effort towards something and trying to be good at something. That's worth it to my family. So I decided, okay, well, I started looking into it and I went for helicopter.
Nice. Yeah, I was gonna say train. You need a degree with a train.
Yeah. Well, I looked into the train stuff and that lifestyle just to learn how to do it and then make that a career. That seemed like a nightmare, and I feel bad for people. It's awesome. It's an awesome job, but the lifestyle, they deserve more. They deserve a lot more.
Oh yeah.
So I decided to go for helicopter, and the only goal was to, okay, let's see how far I can take this. Let's see how much I can learn. The original goal, I started with smaller goals, and I thought, okay, I just want to be a helicopter pilot, in the sense of, okay, once you get your first license, you're technically a pilot, right? So you don't have to make it a career. There's different licenses, right? So I went for it. I studied hard. I ended up being, not only was I the only female helicopter student in my school, I was the youngest student, and I was the top of my class, and I'm very proud of that. They even offered me a job. They told me, if you decide to continue this as a path for a career, we'll give you your first job so you can build your hours. So yeah, that was awesome. I loved it. But then,
now I know who to call for Yamadori retrieval.
well, I'm pretty sure the license is expired by now. That was. I mean, okay. Yeah, I'd have to renew it.
Gotcha.
But
there's time. There's still time.
So after I finished my first license, I started considering. I was like, oh, maybe I should make this a career. I was doing super well at it. For how little time I had. I again, no aviation background, so
right.
it was quite a surprise even for my family. Now my family, my parents, they honestly hated it. They did not like it. It terrified them. Because
yeah, there's a lot of circumstantial things that can happen, right?
It's a death trap to them. In their mind, it's like, oh my god, at any moment, because I would go home and I would talk to them, and I'd tell them about like what I was learning and the maneuvers I was practicing, and most of the maneuvers are emergency maneuvers, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of like auto rotations where the engine quits, and like all this different stuff. You have to maintain RPM. You're basically crashing out of the sky, and you have to maintain an RPM enough, spinning the blades enough that you don't just fall out of the sky. It's just So it's very nerve-wracking, right? Like there were times I would get out of the helicopter and up to 30 minutes, I'd say about 30 minutes after, I would still feel myself shaking.
So I'm guessing you never convinced your parents to go in the helicopter with you then, after they heard all of that?
No, they did not. That is one thing they did not do with me. Although I did get my father to try fixed wing, just planes, and he really enjoyed that. And my mom refused to get in any of them. So
would you classify yourself as a semi-adrenaline junkie as well?
No. I'm terrified of heights.
Really? You chose that? Interesting. Like train makes sense if you want to be on the ground, right? But
yeah, it's not necessarily an adrenaline thing. It's more about pushing myself to see how good I can get at something and how far I can push it. Not to an extreme level as like, for that adrenaline sense. It's more of like challenging myself.
Mentally, the learning, right?
Yeah, how far can I get myself? And challenging physically and mentally, that goes into a lot of the other things I do. One of the things I've done it twice now. I've gone and done the Camino de Santiago. If you don't know what that is, it's traditionally a pilgrimage that crosses the traditional route. It's routes all over Europe. So you can start pretty much anywhere. But the main route starts from France, the border of France and Spain, and you can walk, bicycle ride it, you can horseback ride it. There's many ways to do it, but you go from the border of France and Spain, and you work your way all the way to the other end of Spain. So and there's a city at the end called Santiago de Compostela, and that's like the finishing point, right? So, and a lot of people who are not religious do it as well. It's probably one of the best hikes in the world. So it's about 500 miles. So the entire length of Florida.
Nice.
So I think it's 700 something kilometers. I think that's in kilometers, but but that and you're going over the Pyrenees, and that's one of those things that pushes me to my limits to see how far I can get when it comes to, for example, my will, not giving up. You're walking day in and day out for me, it took me almost 2 months, right? It depending on who you are and how fit you are.
Right.
Different timings. But for me, the first one I did it with my mother. She came with me. the first time. And this was right out of college, right before I started helicopter.
Okay.
And we walked the entire thing together. We actually went further. We went all the way to the coast. So officially the entirety of Spain. You know? So that's why it took an extra time too. And that was rough. I did not train enough for that. We trained like it was kind of a last minute decision too. So that was my bad. But you know, like we did train as much as we could beforehand, and yeah, that was rough. My body was not ready for that. I mean, you don't realize how much of a toll just walking all day, every day. You know, you don't really sit down, and you just kind of you keep going. The first week or two was grueling. Like that was rough.
And you probably had a big backpack too, right? Like backpacking.
Yeah, so you carry everything on your back. Your whole life, right, is in your back. You use everything for sleeping, going to the bathroom, eating, everything. It's all there, right? All the toiletries, everything. All your clothes. You have the clothesline. You have the soap. You have everything, right? And yeah, so that was a good test for me to kind of regain my confidence in myself, right? Because when like I said earlier, when I got out of college and I had stopped doing the music and the archery at that level, it was pretty devastating to my confidence. And so by being able to complete something like that, it told me like no matter what, I won't give up. I'm not going to give up, right? That's why the Camino is so nice, because it really makes you self-reflect. It gives you a lot of time to think. And
that's all you can do. That's all you can do.
Yeah, right. So, well, no, you make a lot of friends along the way. You meet people that you would have never met before. True. You know, you kind of immerse yourself into a whole new culture, and it's cultures actually, because you meet so many people from different places, and it's really an interesting thing. It's not just visiting a place, you know, and then kind of getting the outside. It's actually you're inserting yourself.
They commiserate together.
Yeah. So I mean, you can every night you're sleeping like in albergues that could have up to like sometimes 20 people in one room, 50 people in one room, all bunk beds lined up. Yeah. So imagine trying to sleep with all that snoring. But yeah, that was a really good way for me to kind of self-reflect, figure out, okay, it's okay for me not to know what I want to do with my life. That's okay. I thought I was going to figure it out. I didn't. So, but by the time I got back, I realized, that's okay. I'm only in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And I know, that as long as I don't give up and I keep going forward, I enjoy that journey. It's all going to be fine,
Well, as you said, it's about experience, right? Because experience gets you to the next point of where you can learn even more.
Exactly. So I came back from that hungry to do learn anything, right? So I came back, I got a job. I worked at a violin shop where they made, violins, violas, cellos, those kind of instruments, because I play cello. So and that was really cool because I thought about wanting to be a luthier to learn how to make the instruments. And I did that for a little while, and it didn't seem to be going anywhere. I don't really want to talk badly about.
No, it's a hard career. I know a couple people that do repairs and things. It's a bread and water kind of situation sometimes.
Yeah, so it didn't feel like it was going the direction I needed to go educationally wise. So I decided, okay, let me go to the next thing, and that's where I went to helicopter. Okay. And everyone, even at the old job, was super supportive. So that's awesome. The thing.
So you end up doing all these emergency landings and all these things. Your dad goes into fixed wing, and then where'd you go from there?
So after that, after I finished my first license, I started working on the next ones, but then COVID hit. So everything shut down.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then that was the time where I was able to kind of, again, reevaluate. And I talked to my family, I kind of talked to myself in a way, and it came down to a few things. First of all, my family was beyond stressed about it, but that's not a reason to quit anything. So yeah. Then the other thing was the expense, and this is a major one for me. The expense was a little too extreme. The the rate that, that we were flying at, I mean, depends on the helicopter, but per hour it could be about $600.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you're flying, let's say every day for at least an hour, sometimes 2 hours a day,
Go fund me.
Yeah, exactly. So, and bless my parents. I mean, they're the ones funding this the whole time.
Wow.
And it got to the point where it was okay, if you're gonna make a career out of this, we'll keep going, but there's a good chance we'll have to take a second mortgage on the house. Like, and I'm over here sweating, like stressed. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do that to them. I can't do that to them, And
are your parents originally from Florida?
No, my father is from Puerto Rico and my mom is from Honduras.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they just came here and met here? Or?
Yeah, so they happened to be working at the same company. My dad used to work for Motorola because he's an engineer, and that's where he met my mom.
Very
Actually,
cool.
it was through my grandma, pretty sure.
There you go. Thank you, Grandma.
She worked at the same company, and she's like, "Oh, look at this young man from my daughter." Yeah.
Matchmaker.
Yeah, exactly. And then that was in Palm Beach where I was born, and but yeah, so I with that expense, and then I thought, okay, how can I fund that so that I don't have to put that load on my family, because obviously they love me a lot and they want to make it work, even if it puts them in a hole. I'm just like, no. So I started thinking about, okay, maybe ways to fund it. There wasn't much available out there. It's not like college where you can defer and things like that. It's all straight there. There are some scholarships in there. I applied and it just didn't seem like I didn't get anything for the private pilot, and the next one it was just going to cost too much by the time I even got a scholarship.
Right.
So I thought military, but then my parents also the same thing. It's much respect to the military. My husband's in the Army, but for me going to helicopter, my family was very afraid that I would be deployed, and
I was gonna say it's a big commitment too.
It's a big commitment, to enlist. So that was, and then they were so terrified of that. They're like, no, don't do it. So, and at the end, putting all that together, plus my stress, the idea that, okay, this is taking a toll on my body, and my mind, like I can tell after flying, just an hour, what is it going to do to me after working all day? Let's say I'm flying, a whole shift, depending on what I end up doing. But, so putting all of that together, I decided that probably wasn't the best career path for me. Although I loved it, just like I loved all other things that I needed to be a little bit smarter about that one. So
experience it, right?
Yeah, I experienced it. I know how to do it now. I'm happy I achieved my original goal.
Done, finished. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the only thing I do out of all the things that I do that I don't currently continue doing.
Is it flying?
It's a flying. It's just too expensive, and if I'm not going to go anywhere with it, if I wanted to renew my license, but otherwise it's to do it like on a weekend. Oh, let me go flying. It's just a little expensive.
So besides Yamadori, we know who to call if there's a zombie attack. So we're good. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Get us out of Dodge.
Yeah.
Through all this time, as I know you're in Bonsai now, it's what we're discussing, right?
Yes.
But through all this time, how did nature play into this for you? Did you ever extend yourself into your swamps of Florida, or, how did you involve yourself in that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, I always like being out in nature. I like hiking. I like cycling. That's another big hobby for me. I would do a lot of cycling. Archery is a lot in nature. A lot of my favorite competitions were in the forests. So you have what are called field competitions. Those are going to be literally where you have like a path set, and within the forest there'll be a target. Sometimes in between trees and everything, or over a lake is one of my favorite ones.
Wow.
And you have to make those shots. They're all at different distances, and that's so amazing. You're in the middle of nature or the forest. And you hear all the insects, and that's where I started getting a love for insects. I studied some of that in college too, entomology, and so that's another of my hobbies.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've always been, loved nature. I was always the kid that I would go outside and I'd see a frog and freak out in a good way. I would go grab it, bring it to my parents. My mom, actually, she was always the type of person that was always very afraid of nature, right? Snakes, frogs, roaches, anything that was, any insect, spider, anything like that. And by the time I was in college, by the time I was in college, I had her, like, she would go, I had a pet giant African bullfrog at one point.
Oh.
And this is a meaty boy. Like, he was big. Like, it was awesome. And she at first she was so afraid of it. She was so afraid. She wouldn't get anywhere near it. It was like, no. And then there was a little bit of time where I forgot what I was doing, but I went on a trip. And so she was the only one available to take care of it. My dad works, and at that time she wasn't working. She was staying at home. So I begged her, and she said, okay, I'll take care of it it was like a week or two. And when I came back, my father comes up to me and tells me the story about how she had come back home from the store, the pet store, and had bought roaches for the frog and grabbed a roach, showed it to my father, and said, look at this roach. I paid this much money for this, and they gave me such a tiny roach. Look at this, and he needs a bigger roach. And then he's looking at her, and he's like, you do realize you're holding a roach? She's like, but the frog needs to eat.
She went mom mode on it.
Yeah, so she over time being exposed to me, she has exposed herself to nature, and now she loves all creatures and animals, and she's not as afraid of them anymore. So
hell yeah, go mom. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So kind of going back into bonsai. How does this all connect to bonsai, right? So,
well, I was gonna ask before you get into that. When was the first time you saw one?
Oh my God, I've seen them throughout my life.
Okay.
That's the weird thing. It's like, it's one of those things. It's just like, for a lot of people, and the same thing happened to me a lot, is that you would see things throughout your life and not realize it's something that you can do. Right? So, for example, flying planes or helicopters, you see them all the time. And it never occurred to me until after I was like 20 that I thought, you know what? I kind of want to learn how to do that, like it never occurred to me before. So the same thing with bonsai, I'd seen it before. I think one of the first places I ever saw it was at Murakami. It's a museum down in Florida, South Florida. My parents had, because we lived in Palm Beach, it's close by. So, for special occasions, after, for like anniversaries for my parents, things like that, we would go there. So I remember seeing them, but it never, again, doesn't click.
Right.
And that would happen throughout my life. I always loved going to gardens. I always loved going to see that kind of nature. So if anytime I travel, whether it be for cello or archery or anything I ever did, we would always take advantage and go to a local botanical garden or museum or things like that. My parents loved that too. So we would go do that on a free day. And archery was great for that. Archery would send you all across the country, and I would go every time we stopped in a place in a different state. We would stop at like a botanical garden or something like that. And sometimes you would hit a bonsai museum. The most, I think the recent one before I actually got into bonsai was the Australia one. That I went all the way to Australia, and I was looking, what's around, what's going on here in Australia. Let's look it up. I looked on Google and I found a bonsai museum, and I was like, cool enough, that sounds good. So I went to go see it. So it's always been like that throughout my life. And then it wasn't until I got into helicopter and, I looking for another way to, relax. And I happen to be driving down the road. I see a sign for a bonsai nursery, and that's immediately where it clicks. It's like, oh, I can do that.
I feel it similarly. I mean, I saw my first one when I was about 7, 7, 8 years old, my hometown, small little town in Oregon. It just sticks with you, right? And then that one day, like, I'm going to do this. You bring it home.
I've always loved the way they look. They're so beautiful. They stick with you. You always remember seeing bonsais. They're amazing. They stick to your soul.
Well, as a thing, you're a kid. It's the same height as you. Sometimes it's approachable. It's like, oh, that's the same as me. Oh, okay. You know.
Yeah. I always loved like the Penjing. I would see it, and the little figurines and everything in there. I'm like, oh, look, little man. There's a little man in that one.
Little world.
This one has a river.
So then you stop by the nursery. Do you remember, like, specifically, do you just throw by, like, oh, I need to turn around and go? Or did you just like, oh, I'll get there soon? or how
I
did it
do not
transpire?
remember, honestly.
Okay.
I do not remember. I don't know if sometimes if I see something, I immediately just like, whoa! No, I'm kidding. No, no, I'm making
DC
you turn and
driving.
go back. No, I'm making you turn and go back. But or it just depends. If it's a day where I'm not really in a hurry to be anywhere, yeah, I'll stop. Or if obviously if I'm scheduled to do something, I'm not going to stop. But I'll keep it in mind and do it like the next available time, next available day. I don't remember though.
No, no worries. No, I just thought it's always interesting to me, and I know Ryan, I've discussed this before, is like how people actually get into it, because you get into it and then you really get into it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, where's that line? And
Yeah.
then when does it become more of I don't want to say an addiction, but a lifestyle,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
For me, it was pretty immediate.
yeah.
Uh,
It shows. I mean,
yeah.
look what you're doing now. I mean, so you go to you see the nursery, and then what? A couple months pass, a few weeks, you hit up. I believe I saw that the Fengu goes by Gary. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
He usually goes by Gary. Yeah. No, for me, I especially after college, I dive into things. I don't wait. Life is too short to wait. Like,
For sure. No, for
next
sure.
free time, I am going there. I have it on my list. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. So I went and did. I don't. There's no way I waited a month.
Okay.
Maybe a week max. It just depends on the scheduling with schooling. At that time, I was doing helicopter. So, but in the next available chance that I wasn't studying or in school or teaching my students, I went to the nursery. Yeah, I remember meeting Gary for the first time, and it was, of course, the first time you meet anybody, it's a little awkward. It's a little bit, distance. Yeah. It's and very thick accent. He's Chinese, and I met his wife Nina, and I just at the beginning, they just leave you alone, and they're more reserved. They're more reserved, so they don't attend their club, the local club or anything like that. They're not. They have their life there. They're happy. He likes to work on his bonsais, and that's what he likes to do. So he's just there living his best life.
Good.
So I started walking around. And I go to near the back of the nursery. It's a very small nursery off of US 1, and I go to the back, and he has his more like exhibition trees. His personal collection, and it's pretty small because obviously he's running a nursery and it's just him. So but it struck me, these trees. He had a way, or he has. Sorry, he has a way of the way he. At that time, the way I would have described it is like, wow, he has a way of manipulating this tree to look so like it just connected with me. I just really liked his style, the way he would work on the trees and how they would develop. Very naturalistic look, much more traditional Chinese than Japanese when it came to the styling. Lots of Penjing. Of course, the name of the garden is Penjing Bonsai Garden.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah. And then I saw a tree. I saw this one tree that I could not, like, as soon as I just stare at it. It's like when you see a painting that just strikes you so much, it just connects with you that you're just like, this is the greatest painting I've ever seen in my whole life. That kind of thing. Yeah, that happened with this one tree. I kept staring at it. I just looked at it. And that was when I decided I'm going to come back here enough times that he will let me touch this tree. Because you're not allowed to touch them. Yeah, you can't just go up and touch them, And I was like, I really want to touch this tree.
What type of tree was this? Do you remember what it looked like?
It was it's my Banyan ficus, the one that I displayed in Epcot last year.
So you own that tree now?
Yes.
Wow, what a circumstantial.
Yeah. So that was the tree that started it all. I fell in love with it, and it was just. I begged Gary. I was like, you need to teach me. I pestered him. I went back there a lot, and I was just asking him for all the resource books, anything. I started going online and looking at everything. Mind you, this is all while I'm still doing helicopter, my studying. I still teach my students, I'm like, I just got so obsessed. More obsessed than I have for anything in my life. And that is saying something because I get obsessed about almost everything that I'm passionate about. So, I
can relate.
Yeah, I'm passionate about it. I'm obsessed with it. So, but yeah, I just went crazy learning it. And my goal was I just wanted for him to let me work on that tree.
Mm.
And it got to the point where, yeah, it just, I went wild with it. And eventually I was able to convince him to let me buy it. Now I had to make payments for a long time. Worth it. It was, yeah, I made payments for a lot. I begged him. I was like, I needed to prove to him, because it wasn't about begging or anything. The whole idea was that, okay, I knew I needed to prove to him that I was dedicated to this. He's not going to sell someone a tree if they're not, obviously dedicated to it, that they're going to stick to it. And he's been growing this tree since it was basically a seed, or I think it was a seed, or was it a cutting? I'll have to ask him. But the whole time, for 30 years, that tree, yeah. Yes, 30 years. I have to think about that for a second.
No, you're good.
He had developed that tree all that time, and I'm not even 30 years old. So it took a while, and eventually he saw that I was, not only was I passionate about it, but I was extremely dedicated. I went out of my way. I would go travel just to learn. I made it my business to go learn from Peter Chan. I got obsessed with it, and it got to the point where he started trusting me with all his trees. So I would, he would teach me, and we would work on stuff. He would let me go work, we work together, or he would ask me to go prune a tree, that kind of thing. I had his trust at that point. We trusted each other, and that became my first real mentor. And we're like family now. They come over for the holidays and, Thanksgiving, and yeah. And, so yeah, and eventually I was able to convince him to let me start making payments on it and buy it.
Nice.
And the whole thing was I was not allowed to take it home until I was completely, like, for sure that tree was my life, mentality. I traded my car in for that tree. I traded my Mazda Speed 3 for a 15-passenger van Ford Transit.
Nice. Transits are great.
Took all the seats out, and because nothing could fit the tree. This tree is huge, right? It could fit like in a minivan with this much clearance. Not enough. So we went looking around, and I was able to find a used, pretty much brand new though. It only had like 400 miles, but it was sold as used. It was like for a failed business, and so I got this huge van that I never would have expected to have such a huge vehicle just for that tree. I got into carpentry just for that tree. I built, the first time I ever really worked with wood, I started, with my dad's help, I built all the tables for all my trees at home, and the one for this tree specifically, a special table that will never fail. It's super sturdy. And it has wheels and everything. I even made a ramp, and in case of any bad weather, I could wheel it inside the house.
Nice. That's dedication.
Yeah. So really, really big dedication. I made sure all that was set before I brought the tree home.
No, that's smart. Instead of diving and be like, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah. No, I took my time, although I did it fast, because I was so into it,
Right.
I did take the time to really dedicate myself to that, to make sure that my biggest fear was that I would harm the tree. It would be devastating. I found the love of my life in a tree. There's no way. I pamper that tree so much. Yeah, the greatest thing for me is to see it happy. That you can see that it's healthy and happy and vibrant. And, it's not as important for it to be like perfectly styled. It's more to be healthy.
Yeah. It's your family member.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that was my journey getting into bonsai.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, at that time, did you have many other trees leading up to before he let you buy that one? Or was your whole focus?
Yes. Part of my training, my self-training is I went and I dug up everything I could find in my mom's garden. I mean, I destroyed the garden around the house. I went around and, I started I would go to the local park, the forest, and just kind of looking, I done it, I don't like the idea of taking a lot from the land, especially if I was so new and, I didn't want to just destroy it, but my mom's garden was fair game. So, there's a lot of, a lot of, trees that, native in that area of Florida. So, I would do the research. Okay, can I dig this up? Is this the right time of the year? And I would dig it up and then start practicing doing stuff on it. Even if I couldn't dig it up, I was practicing techniques, cutting, wiring, things like that, just to try it on just the plants outside. Anything that had tough enough branches as a wire. So I tried on everything. I would go to local nurseries, like normal nurseries, not just bonsai, but like normal garden nurseries, looking for something looking really sad and twisted and everything that no one wants to buy. And then I grab that and take it home and all excited, I put myself through a lot, especially once COVID hit. That was everything I was doing was between that and painting. I was painting and bonsai, and I spent all my time either watching a video about bonsai, reading about bonsai, testing whatever I had learned through reading or watching on something. Didn't have to be a bonsai. Like I was testing it. And that was just, I'd wake up, go do that until I went to bed, basically. I mean, that was my obsession, for all that time. I mean, it was pretty rough, during lockdown. What are you going to do? It takes a big mental toll, also physical. No one wants to go outside,
And where you were working where before COVID, the quarantine? I'm sorry, what? Where were you working before the quarantine?
Before the quarantine, I was in flight school.
But were you working at the same time getting paid by them, or was it?
No.
Okay.
The offer for the job was that if I finished all my licenses. So I still needed to get several more licenses. I think it was at least 3 more before I could start working there. I needed my instrument license, I needed my commercial license, and then I needed my instructor license at a minimum to start teaching. And that's a lot. That's
a lot of money. No, I was just thinking because, like, from my experience, I lost my job in quarantine. I was cooking. I helped up a restaurant when I moved to Columbus. And I applied myself to be, I'm like, if I'm going to take bonsai seriously and want this to be my life in some way or another, I need to do this every day. Yeah. And so, March 14th came, governor of Ohio was like, you don't have a job anymore. Come home, trying to explain that. What'd you do? Wasn't me. And then, like, for you yourself going into it, that's awesome, because I feel like there's a lot of people that want to do that, but they don't have the availability. Would you say that the availability of having that time just to literally have nothing was given to you in this state of like, I want to do this, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to take advantage?
It's amazing because it's like it was meant to be in that sense. If I didn't, although I don't like saying it because COVID was horrible, but if that hadn't happened, if that shutdown hadn't happened, I wouldn't have had that time to really dedicate myself to bonsai and really explore it to the level that I did. No, but I still worked. I throughout all this time, mind you, all the things, and I tell you the stories, right? All the things that I do, everything I did before, I still do them, right? I still do the cello, I still teach. So I have students, and I've had students all this time. So during COVID, what I ended up doing, I had to learn how to teach online.
I was gonna ask, I'm like, how did that go?
that was a real struggle at first, trying to figure it out, because how do you teach something that is so personal in person? You have to be able to see it and hear it, the quality of the sound. There's so many little nuances to it. That's so hard. So we had to really adapt. And a lot of, obviously I lost most of my students. Most of my students. Most people, they want the in-person lesson. I don't blame them, but I wasn't going to risk myself or my family. We didn't know what COVID was going to be like. We just didn't take that chance. So the remaining students, we tested it out. We did online lessons, and we now have a formula that works. Me being here in DC, I'm still teaching my students that are in Florida.
Nice.
So but a lot of it is, having, I have my students send me recordings. It's very important. It has to be set up a certain way, and multiple are better at different angles too. The more I can get, the better. Better if you do outside the lesson, right? Because Zoom, the quality of the sound,
not good.
Not that great. So I'll have all my students send me recordings of their practice, and they have to if they remember to do it. Send me multiple, and that way I can see how they're practicing, if they want to perform something for me, okay, let me know in advance, okay, I'm going to perform this for you, so I can see that, because there's different ways of analyzing, right? It's not just, I'm not trying to look at them constantly, okay, this needs to be performance perfect right now, every lesson. No, we're trying to make progress. Let me see how you're practicing. Let's try to improve that, because if you're going to spend all your time at home practicing, that's like 90% of the work. You have to make sure you're practicing correctly. So show me how you practice. So that's a lot of what I do online is they have to send me recordings, and then I send them recordings as well. So if they want to hear what a piece sounds like, I'll record it, send it over to them. Those kind of things. It's just adapting to it. It so far, weirdly enough, it's worked. I wouldn't say the progress is as fast. I still think in person is better.
Definitely. Well, similar to like bonsai education online, right? Nothing beats the in-person, hands-on, like you were talking about, approach. Like Ryan and I both talked about this before. It's like, will it ever get to the point where online education supersedes? No, because you cannot have that back and forth. Like, there's always that disconnect.
Learning anything, you have to do that hands-on work. You have to get that experience. It was the same thing, whether it would be music, archery, helicopter. There's nothing you can read in a book that will give you the same experience as actually doing it. I could read the same maneuver in a helicopter, know exactly how it's done, but then get into the helicopter and it's just yikes. That's scary. It's crazy. So same thing with for everything. It's the same thing with my students. So that's how we overcame the COVID for the lessons, and that actually helped translate toward bonsai. It's the reason why I can still teach my students now as I pursue bonsai.
Well, one thing you just said, Angelica, kind of makes me think. You were saying that earlier, you were saying how when you first got into it, you were reading all of these things, you were watching all these movies, and then you were working on all of these trees around the garden. But I feel like a lot of beginners, they do get hooked on the reading and the watching YouTube videos and all of that. But maybe they're too afraid to go off on their own and prune a tree or do the wiring. So what is it, in your experience, do you think that helped you get over that first fear, I guess?
Well, just like anything else, it's practice, right? I've practiced diving in, right? So that's not easy, right? I know that's not easy. That idea, and my students encounter that all the time. Just go for it. Yeah, it's easy to say. It's so easy to say that, but you actually have to practice that. It's no different than any other thing I've ever done, with the auditions. You just have to go for it. You have to, but it's tough. Your body, you literally mentally, like, you're holding yourself back. You're like, what if? And at a certain point, once you practice jumping enough, eventually the fear never goes away. You just learn to walk through it. You just keep going. So I just use the same stuff I learned with that determination. That will of, okay, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let anything stop me, regardless of if I'm afraid, scared, or nervous, because that's me all the time.
So did you apply that to the same thing when, Ryan and I recently started the first ever student bonsai club at Ohio State University.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of students that are really green, which is fine. We expect it. A lot of them are like, oh, it died. I don't know if I should do this anymore. I'm like, no, let's keep pushing. And I bring in an example, I'm like, this one died. Why? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe too cold. Who knows? So is that the same kind of inertia you put into that too? Because I'm sure you've had some that passed away.
Yeah, and this is one of the things I tell my students. It's about when you're making these goals, when you're trying to dive in, you're not going to go from this speed to this speed immediately. Like, that's not going to happen, right? So I'm obviously, when my analogy going into it's you're not going to start trimming a really developed, beautiful bonsai that's already been worked on for a long time right at the beginning. That you're going to be scared. You're like, oh my God, no, that's too much. That's too big of a jump. You start with something more simple. This is why I went to my backyard. I asked my mom in advance, okay, if I destroy your garden. The idea is that it's much better to kill something outside that's easily replaceable than a tree from Gary that he's been working on for 30 years.
Right.
So that gives me the go ahead, that feeling that, okay, it's okay for me to make a mistake. It's okay to make that mistake because I'm working on something that has little to no value.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I can make the cuts, I can do the wire, I can snap the branch, you know, and test it out. And, you know, and even, you know, obviously it's still scary, you know, because you don't want to break everything,
Well,
but, you know, it takes that pressure off. So it's about finding ways. How can you take that pressure off yourself by taking smaller steps to reach that same goal? Because a lot of times if you just dive, you go too far, you make that goal too high, too big, you'll find that as soon as you make that mistake, that fall is going to be farther. And you're going to freak out and you're going to be more afraid to do it the next time.
You start backpedaling. What did I do?
So
Can I do it?
you do steps, like you're walking upstairs instead of trying to make a whole dive leap, you know,
Right.
when it comes to that kind of thing.
No, that's true. And, you know, that's also, I would consider, I mean, I visited gardens, Ryan studied with Dan Robinson, obviously. In all the areas that we've been, yourself included, you put in the effort and the time, people notice it, right?
Yeah.
People see a good thing before it's even established as a good thing. They can be like, oh, they're really wanting to do this. Let's let them be a part of what we're giving to them experiencing it. Let's have hands-on, right?
Yeah, and very important is that idea, like going into it, humbling yourself and saying to yourself, I know nothing compared to what I could know. And
that's the hardest part,
even
right?
Even when I know a lot, I still know nothing compared, because there's always more to learn. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from a famous cellist, Pablo Casals. And I tell this to my students all the time. At 90 years old, he was one of the greatest cellists ever, right? I mean, this guy, he was the best cellist in the world when he was alive. And they interviewed him, and at 90 years old, they asked him, do you still practice? And he said, of course. And they say, why? You're the best. There's no one that can beat you. Like, why? You're perfect. And he's like, there's no such thing as perfect, and there's always something to learn. There's always something you can improve, and that right there is what tells you, okay, it's not about that end journey. It's not about knowing everything. It's about learning. That's the fun part. The fun part is learning. So I like that feeling that it gives me that I don't have to be as afraid. I don't care if I look dumb if asking a stupid question. If I don't know it, I don't know it, and I want to learn it. Right? So
that's the truth. No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, you know, Ryan and I started this podcast because there's like, well, let's make it happen. There's not that many out there, and we want to do it a different way.
And there's plenty of stuff we don't know.
Exactly. And that's why we're learning by talking about people like yourself and anybody else we get on or have had on. It's like the experiential learning process of experiencing it, but also taking part in it and being a part of it, right?
Yeah, and you can learn from anybody. You can learn from anybody, and it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's not even from someone that you would think you would expect. So I learn from my students all the time, and that same thing translates to anything in bonsai. I can learn from someone that has less experience from me. Just like I learn from someone with more experience, because everyone has a different eye, everyone has a different way of seeing it, everyone has a different experience. And sometimes the way you experience something might just be that little bit different than when you tell me how you experienced it, and it recalibrates how I've seen it before. That's learning, right? So everyone can learn from each other. So that idea that you just learn from someone that you perceive as better than you, I don't really see that as very important, in the sense of, to bow down to, the best of the best. Right. Yes, you want to learn from them, but that doesn't mean that when you get up there that you're going to look down on the people below you, because they can teach you too.
Well, exactly. Yeah. In regards to that, that's a great point, because that's gotten you to where you can be right now, right?
Yeah, and I love sharing anything I learn. I love sharing it. I mean, I like to teach. So
because you study with Gary, and then I knew about you from Dave Cutchins, right? So he's like, "Yo, hit Angelica, do this whole thing." He told me about the show you guys did for the Florida big show. Yeah. Where does Peter Chan fit into this? Because I saw that, I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah,
Peter Chan. Everyone knows Peter Chan now. It's like,
yeah. So it's like a weird journey. Again, it's like a zigzag. It's a lot that goes on. So at the very beginning, this was before I had even a year, and I think it was like 6 months in. I decided I'm gonna go learn from Peter Chan. I want to learn, and I found a really cheap plane ticket for just a weekend. Well, first of all, I was like, okay, how do you learn from someone like this? This is like, because he's he's so renowned, like how do you reach out to someone that's so renowned being such a beginner, and it's very intimidating. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be afraid of it. I'm just going to do it. I'm just, I'm going to do it. I sent an email. That's it. That's all I did. I sent an email. I found the email on the website. I sent it to Heron's Bonsai asking, do you teach? Do you offer classes? And I got a response, and yeah, they do. They offer a lot of classes from beginner to, everything, group classes, one-on-one classes. I was like, perfect. I'm gonna do a one-on-one class with Peter. It's gonna be amazing just for the weekend. It's just for a day, So, and they even have a place to stay. So I was able to, stay there. And so it worked out. I found a really cheap plane ticket, and I just went for it. I'd saved some money up, and I went for it. And that ended up being spectacular. I mean, I was so excited. I prepared for that in advance. I studied up. I painted a painting for him. Like let me tell you, when I first arrived and I saw him, I couldn't speak.
You're a fangirl and hardcore.
Yeah, I was so starstruck. And then, I was like, oh my God, I tend to get very excited and very, like, a lot of nervous energy, very excited, extroverted energy, as you can probably tell. But so I was like, oh my God, I tone it down, Angelica. Like, you don't want to overwhelm him. You're just meeting him for the first time. Like, you don't want to fangirl it and make him, feel weird, So yeah, no, he loved the painting. We talked. We had our one-on-one lesson. He decided he wanted to record it.
Oh, wow.
And we got along really, really well. I mean, just the first time ever meeting, he even took me. He cooked dinner for me. He took me to some of his favorite spots for looking at some ancient trees. He showed me this ancient yew right by an ancient, like one of these really old churches. Down the street, and it was spectacular. It was amazing. Oh yeah, it was so inspirational. And he did a little testing with me, and he did the video and everything. And at the end of it, he invited me back, and I said, I was like, oh my God, I was so excited. So I was like, okay, I'll be back next year. But COVID, so that didn't happen. That got delayed. That actually got delayed until last year. But anyway, so I come home. Oh my God, I was on a high. I was like, oh, that was so amazing. I was more enthused than I've ever been. I was like, if you thought I was obsessed, I was more obsessed. Yeah. So, I came back, and I went back to Gary. I just got really into my trees and all that. And then I get a phone call from my local club, the Bonsai Societies of Brevard. And I just, for some reason, it hadn't clicked to me that there was a club, knowing about.
So there's like, blinders on, you're just going full Mach 10.
I was like Gary and Peter and books and
right.
like and videos. So, they called me up. I forgot who it was. I'm so sorry, but it's been a little while. But yeah, they called me up, and they said that they saw my video. I was like, what video? I went online and I found the video. I was like, oh my God. Because I knew he had recorded it, but I didn't know it was out. Right. And, I don't really like watching myself on camera, So I watched it. I was like, oh my God. But they liked it. They asked me if I would compete for them, join the club, and compete on behalf of them for their local, like, district styling competition. And the first thing that went through my mind was like, there's competitions for this? No idea. I had no idea. Because, being so competitive for so long, bonsai was not something I ever expected to be competitive,
Right.
So I was taken aback, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Why not? Yeah, let's do it. So I went to it, and first competition ever was the district between all the different, counties, the clubs, right? And I won it. I won it on my first go. Yeah, I was so surprised. I was so nervous. And all I did is I did what Peter told me to do, and just do the steps he had showed me, start from the base and work your way up, and just focus on the tree and enjoy that process. And that's all I did. I didn't look at anybody else's stuff. I did the same thing I do in my archery with cello. The same way of competing. It's don't worry about what anybody else is doing.
Right.
Do the best you can do. Right. Focus on what you're doing.
Right.
So that's all I did. I just at that point I wasn't putting the pressure on myself, because I thought, this is my first competition ever. I have no idea. This is just so much fun. Like, this is so crazy. I can't believe this is a thing. So I just really enjoyed it. I just really, really enjoyed it, and I ended up winning. And then they come up to me after and they say, okay, but now that you won this, congratulations. And they're like, now that you won this one, you're going to the state one. I was like, there's a state level. There's a state level. I was like, what? So they told me at the Bonsai Societies of Florida, they have a convention every year in Orlando. And part of the convention, there is a styling competition. It's a scholarship competition. And so they told me, okay, you're going to go up to that one now at the next one. And I think because of COVID, there was a year gap, the delay. That whole time frame right there gets a little fuzzy for me because of COVID. But yeah, the next time we were able to do the competition, I went and competed, and again, first time ever doing the state bonsai styling competition, I win second place. Wow. And yeah, I was like, this is not real.
Wow. What trees were you working on for both competitions?
Junipers.
Okay, I was gonna ask, was it just a Shinpaku or?
Yeah, I think it was like a Procumbens nana, something a little,
Throw everything you have at it and it still likes you.
Don't quote me. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's Procumbens nana, but for sure juniper.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, both of them were junipers, and yeah, that was amazing. And even second place, I got a really nice trophy, bigger than I'd ever gotten. And archery competitions are all medals. They're all medals for archery.
Yeah.
So I never wanted such a big trophy. I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I displayed it in my studio, big trophy. And then I got a scholarship, and I got part of the first and second place. They go and they do a demo at the next convention. So that was really cool too. So a lot of opportunities popping up. So it was during that styling competition that I met David. Okay. He was watching the competition, and apparently during the competition, he went up to my parents. He found my parents. Right? He went hunting. He found my parents. Yeah, and he chatted them up, and he was saying how he was really impressed by me, and that he wanted me to join his group. He's forming a group and whatnot. And my dad, oh my God, you should have. My dad is just like me. We love to talk, but you should have seen him that day. He was so proud. He was beaming. He came up to me after, all excited. He's like, I just met this man. You need to meet him. He wants to talk to you about this awesome opportunity. Yeah. He's like, my dad was being like my manager, whatever. Yeah. And so yeah, after the styling competition was over and everything had happened, I was like, oh my God, I was in the stars. I was I went to talk to him. And this is where I met him for the first time, and he was so kind, so welcoming, so nice. I got to, start learning from him here and there. I mean, he's in Ocala, so it was a little bit far for me.
Right.
I shouldn't say that. I go visit Peter, so it's not, that far. But yeah, it is quite a drive. And then, so whenever I got the chance, I would, go over there. We would meet up with at that time we formed the Florida Collective. So it was him with, I think 4 other of his students. And that was a wealth of information. I am looking forward to going back to Florida so I can continue studying with him. He has, especially when it comes to the horticulture side, he has a wealth of information that, if I could get even half of that, I'd be happy. Yeah. So that was awesome. I'll stop there before I keep, going.
No, this is what it's about. We just started this, like we said, we started this podcast to hear people's stories and just express their love and passion for it. Yeah. And you obviously went worldwide already, so.
Yeah, I got obsessed quick. I mean, I'm surprised with how fast it's grown. I mean, that's kind of been the story of my life with the things I like to do. I dive so far into it, I don't let anything stop me, and I let my passion take me. I don't really care anymore about where I'm going to go with it. You know, it's more about how good can I get at it? How much can I learn? Those are the things that are important, those experiences.
So there's something here, like I know with Dave, because he told me, and then you just finished up a tenure as a curator apprenticeship thing at the Chicago Botanical.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
How
So
did
mentor number 4.
That was their first year, right? First year of having it or something, or
yeah. So
how did this even come about that you found out about it? How, run us down the tube of
story time. Another
experience.
Story time. Yeah. So after, doing all this bonsai stuff in Florida and getting really, diving into it, I decided, okay, look, I'm gonna learn more. I want to learn more. Where can I go now? I'm not going to stop myself just, in Florida. Obviously, if I'm willing to go to the UK, I'm willing to go anywhere, So, where can I go next? And at that time, I had been dating my current husband, and he's stationed up here in Maryland. Still is, yeah. But I came to visit him, and one of the first dates that we had ever been on, he took me to the National Bonsai Museum in DC.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So that was because he I love bonsai. So obviously. I went there, and then I was living the dream. I went around. So, this is amazing. This is a quality I've never seen before. Yes, I have, because Peter has beautiful trees, but this is historical trees now. This is a whole different level of trees I'd never encountered before, or fully understood before. I wasn't involved. So.
The provenance of it really just sets it apart.
Exactly.
I mean, they have the tree from Hiroshima, right? The white pine.
Yeah, the Yamaki pine. That's the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. Yeah.
The energy that tree gives off is otherworldly.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that the Yamaki pine today. Right, I was working on a maple, and I was thinking about it. I was like, that tree was started in training in 1625. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead during my break and I looked up what happened around 1625, right? And it's just to put it in perspective of how old that tree is. Queen Elizabeth I died in 1603. 22 years, just 22 years, almost my entire lifetime. She died right, 22 years before the Yamaki pine was started to be trained, made into a bonsai. So, and it's
no, I thank you for that's a great perspective. Actually, I didn't think about it like that.
Or
it's like
the other way around. You think about someone like Bach. Bach was born 60 years after the Yamaki pine was planted as a bonsai.
Oh shit.
Yeah. One of the greatest composers of all time was born 60 years after. I think I have the date. Hold on. I wrote it down because it was so mind-boggling to me. Because I wanted to put it in perspective, because 1625 to me just seemed so, So, let's see, I wrote it down here. Yeah. He was born in 1685. Okay. Which is, 60 years after the Yamaki pine was planted as a bonsai. It started its training.
So that pine, it was trained as a bonsai its entire life, or was it like a Yamadori at some point?
Do not know that. I do not.
Oh, okay.
I know that it's been passed down the Yamaki family for many generations. I think it's been 5. I think it was 5. I'm not.
That's still a lot of.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. And then it got donated as part of I believe it was part of the bicentennial gift to the museum, which was extra memorable. That bonsai survived the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. I believe it was only 2 miles out from the bombing. So, and it survived because it had apparently a wall, covering it, behind it from the blast. So, and the family survived too, I believe. So that's good. I guess.
Definitely.
But super historical tree. And being able to be there now, it's it's amazing. It's so humbling. I look around all these trees, and I would never get tired of looking and just being in awe, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyways, going back to my story.
Yeah, you're on the date.
Got off on a tangent. Yeah.
No,
So yeah, we went on a date. I saw the garden. I was like, oh my God, I was nerding out because by this time I was already super and I was into pots and oh yeah, this is yeah.
So real quick, actually, if your now husband was stationed in Maryland and you were in Florida,
yes.
How did you two say hello, even meeting each other?
Well, actually, we went to elementary, middle, and high school together.
There we go. Okay.
Graduated in class and never actually met.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Two ships in the night. Okay.
Yeah. So it was kind of one of those things that we knew about each other. We had seen each other a lot, but we never actually met. And then of course, my class, we were all Facebook friends. I was the beginning of Facebook at that time. So, we're all Facebook friends. And it was one of those chance things that, when I was doing my art and posting it online and developing my bonsai stuff and whatnot, he was, he would always, say something nice or like, heart it, whatever, just, he would always, it would always be a reaction from him. So I started noticing that. And typically when someone supports my art, it doesn't have to, it'd be anyway, just like it. If I see that you really appreciate my art, I appreciate that, so I'll reach out and I'll say thank you. So I'd say thank you to people all the time, and so there wasn't anything different in this case. Yeah, I reached out, I said, hey, hope, life has been treating you well, thank you so much for, liking my art. I really appreciate it. And that's when we started talking.
Nice.
Just kind of went into the whole thing. Now we're married.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the marriage. It's pretty recent, right?
Yeah, February.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very happy. But so getting back to my story.
Going back to you're on the date.
So we go through, and who do I find watering? I think at that time it was happened to be Mary Madison's buttonwood.
Mm-hmm.
What a coincidence, what a nice coincidence of Florida bonsai. I have, walk up, and Andy, who's assistant curator now, was, I think he was then too. So it's the same thing. He's still curator, yeah. He was watering it, and me being my extroverted self, there's no way I wasn't going to pass up the opportunity. I started talking to him. I struck up a conversation. I told him, that I just started bonsai, relatively new, because in the grand scheme, and I think about it, I've only been in bonsai 4 years right now, 4 years. So, so this is what, 2 years ago? That's it, I started talking to him. I got really nerdy about the pots. I wanted to ask who made this pot and whatnot. And, and I struck up a conversation. And then he told me that they had an apprenticeship. That was it right there. I was like, oh, that's exactly what I've been searching for without knowing. So I immediately, when I went home, I started writing up all my stuff, putting my resume together, doing everything I needed to do that I could think of, and I decided, you know what? I have so little experience. I have no horticulture background. I don't have a degree. I have a pilot's license, but that's not really going to help me. So, how can I get myself up there? Because I'm going to be competing against people. This is the National Museum. This is so prestigious. There's, I had to stand out. So I made it my business through David, he was the starting point. I was able to get information for different people to get advice. That's all I wanted. I wanted input and advice for what they were looking for, because I had no idea what they were looking for. I didn't know if they wanted someone super experienced with a horticulture background, degree, everything, So I wanted to see, okay, what do I need to do to get myself into the running for this? Right. So I got information for this person that led to this person. I ended up talking all the way to Aaron Packard in PPM. Yeah. And that led me to Chris at Chicago Botanic Garden. Because he used to be because Aaron had worked he had been a former curator, right? I'm not sure.
Assistant curator.
Assistant curator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had been a former assistant curator. So I asked him for his input. It was great. And then I got to Chris because he had been an apprentice, which was perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to, someone that's been an apprentice. They know what it's like. What are they looking for? So I got really good input from Chris as well. I even got my way all the way to Michael, the curator here. And I talked to him on the phone. I talked to him, and so, yeah, but by talking to Chris, we ended up having a very lengthy conversation. And, he asked me about myself, and I told him, my passions, and, I told him about my bonsai journey. And, it is more than just the advice for the curatorship, the curator apprenticeship. At the time it was called First Curator's Apprenticeship. Now it's called Bonsai Apprenticeship. The U.S. National Bonsai and Penjing Museum Bonsai Apprenticeship.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's correct. So yeah, talking to Chris, it went so well. By the end of the conversation, he informed me that he was actually going to be starting his own internship there at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And I thought that was fantastic. I was like, well, I'll look out for it, and I'll send my application to that too. Just why not?
Hey, thanks for listening to the Bonsai Time podcast. Now, we're doing something a little bit different. We've broken up Angelica's interview into multiple pieces. So to hear the next part of our interview with her, we'll see you back here in 1 week. And bonsai on.
Today's episode has been recorded, produced, and edited by Kevin Ferris and Ryan Houston. Our music was provided by MIDI Cancer. To find more music from MIDI Cancer, check out their SoundCloud and Bandcamp pages. To find more information on the podcast, please check out our Instagram page, Bonsai Time Podcast, and our website, bonsaitimepodcast.com. To stay in touch with us, Kevin's Instagram is Kevin_Ferris, PNW, and Ryan's website is right2tree2.com. You can find these links in the description below. Thank you for listening, and bonsai on!